Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to this last lecture of the course where we are going to focus on theorizing the findings, which is linked to the last sections of the assignment and also your dissertation. So first of all, this concept of theorizing is important because maybe it's a bit too abstract. What does it mean? But let's situate it in the assignment and also in the dissertation because usually theorizing comes uh, clearly in chapter 5. It's important to notice that theorizing in the end is also a process that is basically reflected there in chapter 5. But what I mean with the process is that all the time that since you started this research process, all the time you are reflecting on, are things working like other studies are supposedly say it should work? Like, is there consistency with what previous studies say, or am I finding something new? And if I'm finding something new, am I able to explain it? Because that is the process of theorizing, all the time contrasting your findings and the empirical world with what we previously know. So although it's in chapter 5, it's written in there, most of it, and it's reflected in there. In reality, this theorizing is a process that goes over the whole research project. The idea or the outcome of this theorizing process is to kind of improve the theory or the knowledge that we have. So it's super important that it is clear that the theorizing part, well, the name it says, is theoretical, conceptual, is not practical. Like theorizing is not to say like the conclusion is that the company should behave like this is not theorizing. That is, I don't know, like practical implications, but it's not theorizing. So in the end, because you want to contrast what you learn with what we previously know, this theorizing that comes generally in chapter 5, this discussion, is kind of an overlap between chapter 2 and 4. In chapter 2, you told us what we know about this topic and also why we need to study it. And in chapter 4, you brought some answers to that. You say, like, this is what actually happened. So now in chapter 5, you need to kind of overlap these two. You need to say, like, you remember I told you that? That was the question or that was the problem, where here is the answer. And now you need to incorporate that in the discussion. So some key aspects that I think will be very useful when you start thinking about theorizing and your discussion chapter is that try to use concepts that are well known in the literature. Try not to kind of uh, use new words for everything or randomly use different words for different concepts. Try to always use concepts that are well known in the literature. In that sense, then you join the conversation with the literature. Of course, maybe one of your findings is a new concept or a new mechanism that maybe you discover probably qualitatively, but everything else should kind of have the same language and the same narrative. Like, try not to use a language that is strange from the articles that you discuss. So the language is very important in terms of the concepts and the words that you use to refer to things. Then another key aspect that you need to consider when writing this theorizing is that you will probably need many academic references. This is kind of a contrast with the chapter um, 4, where we talk about findings. In there, there are not many references, so it is more like literally presents what happens. But here, no. Here in chapter 5, you need to again overlap between chapter 2, the theory, and your findings. So you will need to refer a lot to previous research. So keep that in mind. You will need much more differences, much more references than in chapter 4. Chapter 4 has much less references. And then another important point is that in a dissertation, you usually have between 2 and 4 theoretical contributions. I think in this assignment, it is clear that there will be at least 2 theoretical contributions. One connected to the quantitative part of the research, like your hypothesis testing. If you fully support your hypothesis, it has some consequences for the theory and the literature. So what now that we know that you fully support, what is now clearer? What previous contradictory aspect did you solve? Or what blurred aspect did you solve? And then in the qualitative, you can also maybe bring and propose a new theoretical contribution. Like maybe you discover a new concept, or maybe you discover how concepts that already existed, how they work together in order to foster the global mindset. So you will have different possibilities to discuss and to theorize, but I guess it is clear that there are at least two, the quant and the qual. Um, one more thing is that also when you write your discussion chapter and when you start doing this theorizing, do not forget your research question, because in the end, that is what you aim to answer to your research questions. So in a way, that's also a bit kind of logical. That's why you probably will have two contributions at least, because you probably also have two research questions in your assignment. So don't forget the research questions. Don't forget the language that you use in your research question. If you use, for example, relationship for the first research question, that it's probably also reflected in the hypothesis, and that should definitely be connected in the discussion. So remember, the use of the words is key. Use the same words, use the same concepts from research questions, from hypotheses, from the qualitative findings, everything very coherent. And again, maybe I am kind of repeating myself a little bit, but your theoretical contribution has to be kind of backed by previous research. So you need to situate your contribution in that previous research. So not only to use the references, like I said before, but also to clearly state which is the problem or which is the issue that you previously highlighted in chapter 2 and that now you have the answer to. So for this, I guess it's all right for the first video, the first part of the lecture. In the next part, I will discuss a few strategies that you can use to maybe construct a theoretical contribution.